I wasn't sure what I was expecting when I first applied for the graveyard shift at Wendy's, but it definitely wasn't this. I was 18, fresh out of high school, with cosmetology school looming in the fall. I needed money for supplies, and this 24-hour Wendy's on Highway 41 in Terre Haute seemed like the perfect place. The hours were awful, sure, midnight to 6 a.m., but the pay was decent, and I figured it'd be a good way to save up. The first couple of weeks were uneventful. I mostly worked the register, greeting truckers and late-night drivers. A lot of people were half asleep and didn't care what they ordered, as long as it was fast. I spent most of my nights staring at the clock, waiting for the shift to end and just trying to keep myself awake with cups of coffee. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work. Then came Travis. He was 26, with tattoos snaking up his arms, visible through the sleeves of his worn-out Wendy's uniform. At first he didn't seem too bad, just a bit quiet with a greasy dark beard and tired eyes. He worked the grill, and I'd only see him when he was flipping patties or making baconators. But what stood out was how often he worked extra shifts. I'd come in to find him in the back even when he wasn't on the schedule. He always seemed to be around even when I was getting ready to close. I wasn't sure why, but something about him made me uncomfortable. It wasn't just the tattoos or the tired eyes. It was the way he seemed to watch me a little too closely when he thought I wasn't looking. But I didn't want to be paranoid. After all, it was just a job, and I needed the paycheck. But the feeling lingered. It was around 2 a.m. one night when Travis asked me for a ride home. My shift had just ended and I was tired, exhausted really, but I was still wide awake enough to notice his strange request. "My bike got a flat," he said, his voice a little too casual, but I didn't think much of it. I had never seen him ride a bike to work, but I figured he was being honest. "Sure," I said, grabbing my jacket and heading to my car. It was a few miles to his place, but we'd barely gotten started when he started talking about his life. "So, you live alone?" he asked out of nowhere, his eyes flicking toward me. I felt a chill crawl up my spine but laughed it off. "Yeah, well, with a roommate actually," I replied, trying to stay calm. He nodded, his gaze lingering on me a little longer than I was comfortable with. We drove in silence for a few moments, the hum of the car filling the awkward space. But then he said something that made my stomach drop. "You know, I know all the blind spots in the security cameras here," he said casually, like it was a normal conversation topic. "I've been working here long enough to figure it out." I glanced at him, confused, but he just smiled, his eyes glinting in the dim light of the dashboard. When we finally reached his apartment, I expected him to get out quickly, but he stayed there for a moment. He didn't even say thank you. He just stared at the passenger window before stepping out. As I drove away, I noticed something strange. There was a greasy fingerprint left on the window where his hand had been. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I tried to brush it aside. A few days later, something happened that made me second-guess my decision to be polite. I was coming back from work, tired and ready to crash, when I spotted Travis's beat-up truck parked outside my apartment complex. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but seeing his truck there, parked at a weird angle, set off alarm bells in my head. I tried to ignore it as I walked past, but Travis was standing there leaning against his truck. "Just visiting a friend in your building," he said, his smile wide and off-putting. "Small world, huh?" I gave him a half-hearted smile, my stomach tightening. It wasn't like I had a huge social circle, but the thought of him knowing where I lived and showing up uninvited made my skin crawl. That night, as I was heading back to my car, I noticed something tucked under my windshield wiper. A Wendy's receipt. I unfolded it, feeling a cold sweat forming on my forehead. The receipt was from that night. It had my name written on it, my schedule for the next few shifts. I froze. How did he know when I worked? Why would he have that? My hands trembled as I shoved the receipt back into my bag, and I quickly got in my car. I didn't feel safe anymore. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. The following week, I came in for another shift, and things started to unravel. Carlos, the shift manager, pulled me aside just after my shift started. He looked serious, and there was an unease in his voice I hadn't heard before. Travis got fired yesterday, Carlos said, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. He threatened a customer with a fry basket, said he'd serve them extra crispy. I blinked. What? Carlos nodded, grim. Yeah, cops escorted him out. We've had issues with him before, but this was the last straw. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Suddenly, all the weirdness with Travis clicked into place. The extra shifts, the strange comments, the weird ride home. It was all starting to make sense. That night, as I was sitting in the break room, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Miss working with you. When's your next shift? I stared at the screen, panic rising in my chest. The text was from Travis. My heart pounded. I felt trapped, suffocated, like the walls were closing in on me. I knew then that I had to quit. I couldn't take the risk anymore. I went to Carlos and told him everything, showing him the text from Travis. He was visibly shaken. I'll make sure to report it to the police, he said, his voice low. The police investigation revealed more disturbing details. Travis had been tracking employee schedules for weeks, keeping a notebook with everyone's shift hours and even taking photos of the Wendy's security system. They found a collection of old name tags from other fast food jobs he'd worked. 2. He'd clearly been studying us, waiting for the perfect time to make a move. I quit that night and filed a report. The police were able to issue a restraining order against him, banning him from every fast food establishment in Vigo County. I didn't feel entirely safe, but I knew I had done the right thing. It had been a brutal day. 12 hours on my feet at Miami Valley Hospital, bouncing between vitals, meds, and rooms full of half-asleep patients and full-on chaos. I was on my last thread, running on vending machine coffee and 4 hours of sleep when I clocked out. The moment I hit the cold Dayton night air, all I could think about was food. Real food. Not salad, not a protein bar. Something greasy, salty, and unapologetically bad for me. That's how I ended up pulling off I-70 and into the Wendy's parking lot just shy of midnight. There's something eerie about a fast food joint, after hours. The light from the drive-thru flickers like a bad horror movie prop. The dining room's half lit like someone gave up halfway through closing. Inside, it's always too quiet. Just a bored cashier wiping down counters, fryer oil hissing, like a snake behind the scenes. I was too hungry to care. Ordered a Baconator combo and a Frosty. Sat there zoning out to the sound of the soda machine churning behind me. That's when I saw him. He was just there, leaning against the soda machine, hood up, hands in his pockets, maybe mid-30s, scruffy beard, dead eyes. I figured he was waiting on his food, until 5 minutes passed and he hadn't moved. No receipt in hand, no tray, just staring. I looked at him. He looked back, didn't blink. I turned back to my food and told myself he was probably just tired, or high, or both. Still, when I slid into a booth, I picked one in the corner, facing the whole room. That's when I realized he had followed me, not just watching from the soda machine, but now sitting 2 tables away. Still holding a Frosty, still not eating it. I should have left then. I kept my eyes on my tray, pretending like I hadn't noticed. Took a bite of the sandwich, though I barely tasted it anymore. Every few seconds I'd sneak a glance up and he'd still be there, just stirring that Frosty with the spoon, like it was some hypnotic ritual. No phone, no earbuds, just him and that cup. I told myself it was fine. Weird people hang around late-night spots all the time. I worked in healthcare. I've seen way stranger. But there was something about this guy. He didn't feel off, he felt intentional, like I was the reason he was here. At 12:10 a.m., I tossed my trash and headed for the door. He didn't move. I glanced over my shoulder as I pushed through the exit. He was still at the table, spoon mid-stir. But the second I got into my car and turned the ignition, his chair scraped against the floor inside. I watched the reflection in my rearview mirror as I pulled out. Headlights flicked on. It was that same rusted-out Chevy Malibu. 2 parking spots over. I could see the hood up now, dark blue, nearly black. It followed as I turned onto the service road, still behind me after the stoplight, still behind me when I changed lanes. My heart started climbing into my throat. I didn't want to drive straight home. No way was I letting that car near my apartment. So I made a quick right and pulled into a Kroger lot 2 blocks down. I parked fast, slipped inside with a plan. Stay in the store long enough for him to get bored and leave. Simple. But when I grabbed a basket and turned down the cereal aisle, he was there. Same hoodie, same face, still holding that Frosty. Didn't say a word, just smiled, and I dropped the basket. My stomach dropped, that icy, involuntary cold that hits you when instinct kicks in and your brain can't keep up. He didn't move, just stood there, at the end of the aisle, like he was waiting to see what I'd do. I bolted. No hesitation, left the cereal, left the cart. I pushed through an older couple in produce and nearly knocked over a pyramid of apples by the bakery. I heard someone call out, "Hey!" But I didn't stop. Out the front doors. Keys, already in hand. I got into my car, slammed the door and locked it in one motion, fumbled with the start button, engine finally roaring to life. Then I saw it. His Malibu, 3 spaces over now. No lights. Just parked there in the dark, half hidden, between 2 trucks. He was in the driver's seat, watching me, and smiling. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook on the wheel. I didn't know whether to floor it, scream, or cry. Maybe all 3. Instead, I called 911. The dispatcher was calm, way calmer than I was. "Stay on the line. Ma'am, officers are en route. Do not engage with the vehicle. Go back inside if you feel unsafe." I did, ran back into Kroger like my life depended on it, which in a way it probably did. The manager looked up concerned, and I guess I looked wild-eyed enough that he didn't even ask questions. Just let me stand near the customer service desk, while I clutched my phone like a lifeline. 12 minutes later, police lights lit up the parking lot. By the time we got outside, the Malibu was gone. But something was left behind, on my windshield. It took me a second to register what I was looking at. It wasn't some cryptic note or threatening message scrawled in Sharpie. No, it was Frosty, half melted, lid off, straw stuck in sideways like he hadn't even tried to drink it. It was sitting dead center on my windshield like some twisted calling card. One of the cops used a tissue to pick it up. Another scanned the receipt stuck underneath it, damp but legible. Timestamp, 11:46 p.m. Same Wendy's I'd been at. 1 minute before I walked in. "So he got there before you," one officer said, flipping the receipt over. "Knew you were coming." I swallowed hard. I hadn't seen him in the parking lot when I arrived. Had he followed me from the hospital? From the gas station I stopped at on the way. How long had I been his plan? The officer asked if I wanted to file a full report. I did. I gave them the make and model of the car, a description of the guy, the hoodie, the beard, everything. They said they'd check nearby cameras, ask Wendy's for footage, but I could already tell they didn't expect much. People like that guy, stalkers who move through quiet towns with no real pattern, they're hard to track, no threats, no license plate. Just a Frosty and a stare that'll haunt me longer than I care to admit. When I got home that night, I parked a block away and walked the rest, just in case. I didn't sleep. Not really. Every noise outside sounded like Malibu's engine. It's been a month since that night and I haven't been back to that Wendy's. I don't even take that exit anymore. Kroger offered me a panic button keychain. The cops checked in once and said the plates were likely stolen. That made me feel worse somehow. I've changed up my routine. I don't work late unless I have to. I park closer, always under lights. I check behind me before getting into the car, and if anyone's following me, I drive straight to the police station. Sometimes I still wonder what he wanted. Was it random, or did he pick me because I looked tired? Alone because I ordered a Frosty too? I've thought about that part a lot. The Frosty, that weird symbolic move. He never drank it, just hold it, like it was some twisted version of a handshake, a way to say I see you. Maybe that's the scariest part. It wasn't a scream or a weapon. It was subtle, quiet. A slow drip of fear dressed up like a fast food ritual. You can laugh at it. I do sometimes. Tell myself I was just paranoid, just overreacting. Then I remember the look on his face in that parking lot. That smile through the fogged windshield. That final receipt left behind. And I realize he's probably done it before. He'll probably do it again. So yeah, sometimes the scariest thing at Wendy's isn't the chili. It's the guy in the navy hoodie with the frosty who doesn't blink, doesn't eat, and doesn't stop until you run. And sometimes, even then, he's still watching. Working the graveyard shift at a Wendy's off Route 22 wasn't exactly what I pictured for myself when I started college, but it paid better than retail and came with half-off Frosties, so I wasn't complaining. Most nights were slow, the kind of quiet that made the hum of the fryer sound like music. I'd show up around 10 p.m., take over from the swing shift crew, and hold it down till Manny came back to open. Manny's my cousin, technically my older cousin, though only by 2 years. He's the assistant manager, knows the store like the back of his hand, and somehow convinced our aunt I'd be safe working solo at night. I'd been doing it for about 6 weeks and had developed a rhythm: clean, prep, keep myself from falling asleep, serve the occasional Uber driver or stoned college kid on a snack run. Pittsburgh at 1 a.m. is different than Pittsburgh at rush hour. On Route 22, it's basically ghost town territory, except for the occasional car zipping by or the flashing neon sign from the closed bowling alley next door. Still, nothing ever really happened. Nothing weird anyway, until that one night, October 14th. I remember because the Steelers had just lost in overtime, and the only customer I'd had for 2 hours was a guy who ordered a Baconator, then cried into it in the corner booth. That night, I had just wiped down the counter and restocked the ketchup packets when the front doors creaked open. 2 guys walked in like they owned the place. One was tall and skinny, the other kind of stocky with a receding hairline. Both wore wrinkled dress shirts and khaki pants, the kind of look someone wears when they're trying to look official, but you know they bought it at Goodwill. "County health inspection," the tall one said, flashing a laminated badge. He didn't smile. Neither did the other guy. Something about them made the hair on my neck stand up. The taller guy was doing all the talking like he'd rehearsed this before. "We got a complaint. Need to check your freezer, fryers, and prep stations. Could be a rodent activity." He waved that badge again like it meant something. But I've seen real inspectors. They come in pairs, sure, but they have clipboards, tablets, and actual uniforms, not dollar store badges stuck in plastic. I squinted at the one he flashed. It had a fake-looking seal, his name typed in all caps, and a blurry county logo that looked like it was printed off Google Images. "Mind if I call my manager first?" I said, reaching slowly for the phone behind the register. The tall guy shrugged. "Sure, but we don't need permission. This is a health emergency." The stocky guy wandered toward the drive-thru window. I noticed his shoes were muddy, but it hadn't rained in days. Not even a drizzle. The floor outside was dry as toast. I dialed Manny. It rang twice before he answered, groggy. "What's up, Danny?" "Hey, there's 2 guys here. Say they're from the health department. Want to check the freezer." Manny paused. Then he cursed. "What? No way. We just got our A rating last Thursday. Those dudes real?" "They got badges," I said quietly, turning away from the taller man. "But they look homemade." "Hell no," Manny said. "Don't let them in back. I'm on my way." As soon as I hung up, I noticed the tall guy had vanished from the counter. I turned. He was halfway to the back kitchen. "Hey," I said. "You can't be back there." "Just doing my job," he said, not even looking at me. The stocky guy was still by the drive-thru window. His eyes were on the register now. I felt something shift, like the air got heavier. My hand went to my phone again. Time to make a different call. I ducked behind the counter and crouched low, pretending to check the fryer temp. My hand slid my phone out of my pocket, screen still lit from the last call. 911. My voice stayed quiet but firm. I'm at the Wendy's on Route 22. Two men just came in pretending to be health inspectors. I think they're trying to rob the place. Are you in immediate danger? The dispatcher asked. Not yet, but they split up. One's near the register, others near the freezer. We're dispatching units now. Stay where you are and do not confront them. Just then, I heard a door swing open behind me. Footsteps, fast ones. The tall guy was running. He bolted past the fry station through the prep area and slammed through the back exit. The stocky guy cursed loud, "Shit!" then turned and sprinted, leaping the counter like some kind of linebacker. I stood, up fast, still holding the phone. By the time I reached the front door, they were gone, into the shadows of the strip mall. Then silence again. Just the hum of the drink machine and my own heart pounding like a bass drum in my chest. Two cops pulled up about 5 minutes later. Sirens quiet, lights flashing red and blue through the windows. I let them in, explained everything. One checked the back while the other took my statement. That's when I noticed the safe room door was cracked open. Inside, the keypad was scuffed, like someone had tried to open it. But they hadn't gotten in. Then one of the officers found it, a laminated badge, stuck under the condiment tray, like it had fallen out of someone's pocket. The guy chuckled. County Health? This thing looks like it was made with a school laminator. It wasn't just a fake. It was laughably fake. But I wasn't laughing. Not yet. By 4 a.m., Manny had arrived, tired but wired with adrenaline. He kept pacing, muttering. I knew something like this would happen. Knew it. The cops showed him the badge. He held it like it was a piece of trash. This thing? My 8-year-old cousin could have made this in Microsoft Word. I told him everything, from the muddy shoes to the way they kept glancing at the register. The officers said we were lucky. At another fast food place just 10 miles away, the same two men had distracted the staff and made off with over $2,000. And they'd done it twice before that, all in 1 week. They used the same trick every time. Late night shifts. Fake. Health inspection, split up and find the safe. One of them even posed as a fire marshal once. That made me feel sick. I wasn't just some lucky guy who caught a break. I was a target, like all the others. They probably had our location picked out days in advance, studied the drive-thru patterns, watched when managers left. One of the cops turned to Manny. You should think about a policy. No access to the back unless someone verifies with corporate. Manny nodded. Done. They left around 4:30. I cleaned up the dropped badges, the scuffed floor, and tried not to think about how fast everything had happened. 1 second I was restocking ketchup. The next, I was part of a police report. Manny handed me a Frosty. You earned it, bro. I don't even want it, I muttered. He raised an eyebrow. You always want Frosties. I shook my head. Not tonight. By the time the sun came up, I was still buzzing, but in that strange, hollow way, where the adrenaline's gone and all you're left with is the memory. 2 days later, I was officially off the graveyard shift. Manny said the corporate approved a $50 bonus. Hero pay, he joked. And from then on, I'd be working lunch and dinner shifts only. No more solo nights. I didn't complain. I didn't miss the stillness, the empty dining room, the slow creeping paranoia. Manny installed new locks, updated the security code, and even posted a laminated sign near the back. All inspectors must be verified with corporate before entering restricted areas. It made customers laugh, but we weren't joking. Turns out, those two guys were part of a string of robberies across 3 counties. They hit fast food joints only, probably because they figured nobody would question authority at 2 a.m. I guess most people wouldn't. But I did. Barely. Sometimes when I'm working late for school or pulling an extra shift, I still think about those guys. What if I hadn't made the call? What if they'd had a weapon? What if they come back? The police never caught them. Just a vague description on a report. 2 males, white, 30s, dressed business casual. Definitely not health inspector material. Funny how something that started as a routine shift turned into a story I'll be telling for the rest of my life. And now, every time someone flashes a badge, I double-check. Because sometimes the scariest thing in a Wendy's at 1:30 a.m. isn't the food, the fryer, or the flickering lights. It's two guys who think 4 for $4 includes your safe, your receipts, and your trust. I don't know what I was expecting when I pulled into the Wendy's on Route 50 in Fairfax, but it sure wasn't what I found. It was a Tuesday night, and I was starving after a long day at my IT job. It was around 8:45 p.m., and normally this place would be bustling. But tonight, the parking lot was almost completely empty. The few cars that were there were clustered in one corner of the lot, leaving most of the area suspiciously vacant. I parked my car and got out, glancing around. There was a beat-up Dodge Neon parked next to the dumpster, and a lanky teen was leaning against the doorframe of the Wendy's entrance, fiddling with his hat and looking a bit out of place. The lights inside flickered, and the drive-thru line was deserted. Something about the whole scene felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. The kid, who I assumed was an employee based on the stained Wendy's polo, raised his head when he noticed me walking toward the door. He gave me a half smile but didn't make a move to open the door. Instead, he stood there awkwardly, blocking the entrance. "Hey man," he said. "Can you give me a ride to the bus station?" I stopped in my tracks, looking him over. The first thing I noticed was his hat. It was the wrong shade of red, nothing like the standard Wendy's uniform. His shoes too looked too clean. No grease stains, no signs of someone who worked in a fast food kitchen. The final oddity was the way he kept nervously tapping his fingers on the non-working headset hanging from his neck. I sidestepped him, forcing a polite smile. "Sorry, man, I'm just here to grab something to eat." As I walked inside, I felt the unease crawl up my spine. Why was he hanging around here at such an odd hour? And why was he asking me for a ride? It all seemed weird. I didn't have time to dwell on it, though. I had a burger to order. As I stepped into Wendy's, the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. The usual hum of fryers and the clatter of kitchen staff working was absent. Instead, there was just the low murmur of the air conditioning and the occasional clink of a spoon on the counter. I walked up to the counter, where Danielle, the cashier, was standing. She looked tired, but gave me a small smile. "Hey, Ryan," she said, her voice soft, as though she were trying not to disturb the eerie stillness of the place. I ordered my usual, Burger 6, no tomato. And as I did, I glanced out the window. There was Tyler, the guy in the polo, pacing outside the door, like he was waiting for something, or someone. He didn't look like he was waiting to work, more like he was just waiting. It didn't sit right with me. Danielle lowered her voice, leaning toward me. "That guy's been here since 4 p.m. He's been testing the door every 20 minutes, seeing if it's locked. We've called the cops twice." My stomach tightened. I had a bad feeling about the whole situation. I paid for my meal and grabbed my tray, heading for the door. As I stepped back outside, I tried to shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. But as soon as I reached the parking lot, I saw something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. As I walked toward my car, I noticed something that made my stomach churn. Tyler was sitting on the hood of my car, just casually resting there, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I stopped in my tracks, my hand instinctively going for my keys. "Come on, man," he said, looking up at me with a half-hearted grin. "Just 5 minutes to Maple Street. It's not far." I shook my head, trying to keep my cool. "Sorry, man, I don't think so." My heart was racing, but I tried to act casual. There was no reason to panic, right? But then, he did something that made my blood run cold. He reached into his pocket and pulled something metallic out. I couldn't make out what it was in the dim light, but it definitely didn't look like a car key. "Hey, get off my car," I said, my voice more forceful than I intended. I took a step back, my eyes never leaving the object in his hand. Before I could react further, Danielle burst out the door holding a broom. "Beat it, weirdo," she shouted, running toward Tyler. The guy jumped off my hood and turned to face her, but he didn't seem scared. He just backed away slowly, still holding whatever he had in his hand. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as he walked toward the back of the restaurant, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I locked my car door and climbed inside, trying to calm myself down. But through the window, I saw Tyler walk to the back of the parking lot, then jiggle the door handles of 3 other cars. I saw the trunk of the Dodge Neon pop open briefly, something bulky inside. It didn't take long for the police to show up. Fairfax PD arrived about 12 minutes after I called, and I watched as they quickly assessed the scene. I sat in my car, still shaken, and watched the officers approach the back of the Wendy's. One of the officers came over to me and asked what had happened. I told him everything, from the guy asking for a ride to him sitting in my car to the strange behavior in the parking lot. The officer nodded, taking notes. "We'll take care of it from here," he said, before heading inside to speak to Danielle and the other staff members. A few minutes later, they came back out, holding a worn-out Wendy's uniform. It was Tyler's. They found it dumped in the men's room. Inside the restaurant, they also discovered 6 mysterious keys on a janitorial ring, which they believed were stolen. And apparently, Tyler's name tag wasn't even his. It had been taken from another Wendy's in Arlington. The police mentioned that Tyler had been known to frequent fast food joints in Northern Virginia, possibly connected to a series of uniform thefts at several fast food chains. It seemed like he had been casing restaurants, pretending to be an employee to steal whatever he could get his hands on. The next few days were a blur. I found myself going back to Wendy's, but something felt different. They'd installed locks on the doors after dusk, and the atmosphere was tense. I stuck to the drive-thru after that night, unwilling to venture inside again. Danielle told me that they had to file a report with the district manager, and the police had advised them to change all the locks and security codes for good measure. I could tell she was still shaken up by the whole ordeal. I never heard about Tyler again, but I can't shake the feeling that somewhere in Fairfax he's out there, possibly wearing another stolen uniform, practicing his "Welcome to Wendy's" smile. It wasn't supposed to be this way. When I landed my first job at Wendy's, I was excited, nervous but excited. Summer break was here, and I needed to save up for college. I didn't want to ask my parents for money, so I figured getting a job was my best bet. I got hired at the 24-hour Wendy's on Route 9 in Poughkeepsie, New York, and was given the night shift to work. It was only a part-time gig, but it was a start. The first couple of days were straightforward. I worked the register, helped clean up, and mostly stayed out of trouble. The crew was pretty chill, except for one guy, Dave. Dave was a 23-year-old fry cook. He had this weird vibe about him that I couldn't quite place. He smelled like old grease, and not in the way someone who works in a fast food kitchen would. It was like the grease had soaked into his clothes, his skin, his hair. It clung to him. He always stared a little too long when you spoke to him. I couldn't pinpoint it, but something felt off. It wasn't like he was rude or anything, just strange. He had this look in his eyes like he was trying to figure you out, but in a way that made you feel like you were under a microscope, and the way he smiled, it wasn't right. Like he knew something you didn't. It wasn't until my second week that things started to get weirder. I was closing that night, working the register while the rest of the crew cleaned up. It was around 11:45 p.m. when I noticed him standing outside in the parking lot, leaning against my car. He wasn't on the schedule, so I wasn't sure why he was there. "Hey, my car's dead. Can you give me a ride home?" he asked as I stepped out. His apartment was in the opposite direction of mine, a good 15 minutes out of the way. But I didn't want to seem rude, so I agreed. The ride started off normal enough, but then Dave started asking odd questions. "You like horror movies?" he asked, his voice strange. I said yeah, figuring he was just trying to make small talk. But then he went on about how he knows where all the managers live, and how he could always get a ride from someone. It didn't sit right with me, but I brushed it off. When I dropped him off, he left behind a sweat-stained Wendy's visor on my dashboard. It wasn't the last time I'd see Dave. 3 days later, I pulled into the parking lot at school, the same way I did every morning. I was half asleep, dragging my feet across the pavement when I saw it. Dave's rusted Pontiac parked by the entrance, just sitting there, no one else around. I stopped in my tracks. What was he doing here? I didn't even want to entertain the idea that he was just passing through, so I quickly ducked inside the school and tried to forget about it. But that night, things got worse. After my shift, I left Wendy's and drove home the usual way. But as I made a left turn, I caught a glimpse of Dave's Pontiac in my rearview mirror, right behind me. I wasn't imagining it. He was following me. I turned a corner and sped up, but he stayed right on my tail. My pulse quickened. Why was he following me? "Hey, it's just a scenic route," he texted me out of the blue when I pulled into a fire department parking lot and parked near a big rig. I sat there for a few minutes trying to catch my breath before he eventually drove away. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept looking out the window, hoping I hadn't just picked up some psycho stalker. But somehow, I knew that was exactly what I'd done. Things took a darker turn the next day. I was on my lunch break, sitting in the break room, when my phone buzzed. A text from Dave. "Need a ride to work tomorrow, 4 a.m. You're my only friend." My stomach turned. I couldn't ignore it. He had already crossed a line by following me to my school, but this was beyond creepy. I didn't want to confront him, but I also didn't want to encourage him. So I texted back telling him I couldn't help him, hoping he'd just leave me alone. But then something weird happened. Carlos, the shift manager, pulled me aside as I was finishing my break. His face was tense, like he'd been given some bad news. "Dave got fired yesterday," Carlos said, lowering his voice. "Threatened. The GM with a meat thermometer. Cops escorted him out." He looked around to make sure no one else was listening, then added, "We don't know where he went, but stay alert." I didn't know what to say. I'd already been nervous around Dave, but this, threatening someone with a meat thermometer, that was just insane. That night, I drove home on edge, my eyes darting between my rearview mirror and the road ahead. I thought I'd finally escaped him, but I knew that something wasn't right. I just couldn't shake the feeling that Dave wasn't done with me. A month later, I got the call. It was from my mom. She'd been at work when the news broke. Dave had been arrested. Apparently, he'd broken into his ex-manager's garage. The cops said he was looking for something, maybe his employee discount, as weird as that sounded. But that wasn't the worst part. They found his stash. A bunch of old Wendy's uniforms, hats, and, most disturbingly, several frosty spoons with teeth marks in them. The weirdest thing, they were all linked to employees he'd worked with. I didn't even know what to think. How had I not seen the signs? The weird ride requests, the texts, the way he watched me too closely. And the frosty spoons, what did they even mean? When I got to work that night, I found something in my locker. It was a Wendy's frosty spoon, just lying there in the corner. The same kind of spoon you get when you order a Frosty, only this one had teeth marks on it. I couldn't breathe for a second when I saw it. I blocked Dave's number and changed my shifts so I wouldn't have to work at the same time as the others who'd been close to him. Carlos, being the manager he was, installed new security cameras around the building. I wasn't going to take any chances. It's been a few months now, and I'm no longer working at Wendy's. I transferred to a Taco Bell across town. It was a fresh start. No creepy coworkers, no weird vibes, just me and some new faces. As for Dave, he's been banned from every Wendy's in Dutchess County. He's out of the picture now, but I know that feeling of his eyes on me will never fully leave. Every time I hear a car in the parking lot late at night, I find myself glancing over my shoulder. I don't think I'll ever forget the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel like I was something to be consumed, like I was just another part of the restaurant for him to claim. The frosty spoons, the ride requests, the way he tried to make himself a friend when he was really just a predator. I still can't shake the feeling that somewhere, out there, Dave is watching. Maybe from behind the bushes outside another Wendy's drive-thru, still waiting.